I still remember the first time I noticed him in the office. It was a Monday morning, the kind where the coffee machine seems to work extra slow and the weekend feels like it happened in another lifetime. Our tech company occupied the entire fifth floor of a sleek downtown building. All glass and chrome, and those uncomfortable modern chairs that somehow cost more than my monthly rent. I've been working there for about 8 months as a marketing coordinator, comfortable enough with my role, but still feeling like I was playing dress-up in my button-downs and slacks. That's when Alex joined our team as the new graphic designer. He wasn't what I expected. In an office full of either overly enthusiastic startup types or burned-out corporate refugees, Alex seemed to exist in his own reality. He had this quiet confidence that drew your attention without him ever raising his voice. Dark hair that always looked perfectly messy, as if he'd run his hands through it just moments before walking in. He dressed simply but well, usually dark jeans and solid-colored shirts that fit just right across his shoulders. And when he smiled, which wasn't often enough, his entire face transformed. I'm not the type to develop workplace crushes. I've always been careful about keeping my personal and professional lives separate, especially as a gay man in a predominantly straight office. Sure, our company had all the right policies and rainbow logos during Pride Month, but there's still that calculation you make. Who knows? Who doesn't? Who needs to know? Who might treat you differently? It's exhausting sometimes, that mental arithmetic we do without even realizing it. But with Alex, I found myself making excuses to stop by his desk, asking for his input on projects that barely needed design consultation, lingering in the break room when I knew he typically made his afternoon tea. Nothing obvious, nothing that would raise eyebrows, just the quiet orbit of one person around another, hoping to be noticed. For weeks, our interactions were perfectly professional with just the slightest undercurrent of something more. A held gaze that lasted a beat too long. A laugh at a joke that wasn't particularly funny. The occasional brush of hands when passing documents across the conference table. Was I imagining it all? Probably. That's what I told myself, anyway. Our office had this particular hallway that connected the main workspace to the smaller meeting rooms in the back. It wasn't wide, just enough for 2 people to walk comfortably side by side. The lighting was always slightly dimmer there, something about energy efficiency that our office manager had explained once during a staff meeting I wasn't really paying attention to. At the end of this hallway was a doorframe that led to the small kitchen area where people would heat up their lunches or grab snacks from the communal pantry. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. The kind of day where nothing special is supposed to happen. I had been working on a campaign brief all morning, and my eyes were starting to blur from staring at my screen for too long. I decided to take a break, maybe grab some water or just stretch my legs. As I stood up from my desk, I noticed Alex doing the same across the office. We reached the entrance to that hallway at almost the same moment. "Taking a break?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes more focused than usual. "Yeah, my brain's starting to melt a little," I replied with a small laugh. "I'll walk with you," he said, falling into step beside me. "I need to talk to you about something anyway." My heart did that ridiculous little skip that I thought only happened in books or movies. What did he want to talk about? Was it work-related? It had to be work-related. We walked down the hallway, close enough that our shoulders occasionally brushed against each other. I was hyper-aware of every point of contact, brief as they were. The hallway seemed longer than usual that day, each step stretching out in a way that made time feel elastic. I could smell his cologne, something woodsy and subtle that I'd noticed before, but never from this close. Neither of us was speaking, and the silence between us felt charged with something I couldn't quite name. We were almost at the kitchen doorway when Alex slowed his pace. I matched him automatically, not wanting to reach our destination too quickly, though I couldn't have explained why if someone had asked me. The office sounds seemed distant now. The ringing phones, the clicking keyboards, the hum of conversation, all of it faded into background noise. Just as we reached the doorframe, Alex stopped completely. I stopped too, turning to face him, a question forming on my lips that never got asked. Because in that moment, Alex moved slightly closer, his body now between me and the doorframe. He wasn't blocking me exactly. I could have easily stepped around him if I wanted to, but something in his posture, in the intensity of his gaze, kept me rooted to the spot. "I've been wanting to talk to you," he said, his voice lower than before, meant only for me to hear. But every time I try to find the right words, they never seem adequate. I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry. What words? I managed to ask, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. Alex didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand slowly, deliberately, giving me every chance to step back or turn away. When I didn't move, his fingers gently brushed against my cheek, so lightly I might have imagined it if not for the warmth that spread from that point of contact. "I've been watching you," he said finally. "Not in a creepy way, I hope. But I've noticed how you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. How you find reasons to come to my desk. How you laugh at my terrible jokes." I felt heat rising to my face, embarrassment mingling with something like hope. "I didn't think you noticed," I said, barely above a whisper. "I notice everything about you," he replied, and the sincerity in his voice made my chest tighten. Time seemed to slow down even further as Alex leaned in, his intention clear. I had a fleeting moment of panic. We were at work. Anyone could walk by. This could complicate everything. But then his lips were on mine, and those concerns evaporated like morning mist and sunshine. The kiss was gentle at first, almost hesitant, as if he was still giving me the chance to pull away. But when I responded, leaning into him slightly, his hand moved to the back of my neck, fingers threading through my hair. The doorframe was at my back now, providing support as my knees threatened to give way beneath me. There was nothing hurried about the way he kissed me. It was exploratory, a conversation without words, each movement a question and an answer all at once. His mouth was soft but confident against mine, and I could taste the mint of his gum, could feel the slight stubble on his chin grazing against my skin. I don't know how long we stood there, suspended in that moment. It could have been seconds or minutes. Time had lost all meaning. All I knew was the warmth of his body close to mine, the gentle pressure of his hand at the nape of my neck, the way my heart was hammering so loudly I was certain he could hear it. When we finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Alex rested his forehead against mine for a brief moment. His eyes, when they met mine, were filled with a mixture of relief and something that looked remarkably like joy. "I've been wanting to do that since my second day here," he admitted, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I couldn't help but laugh softly. "Why did you wait so long? I wasn't sure if you felt the same way. And then there's the whole workplace complication." He took a small step back, though his hand remained lightly on my arm. "I don't usually do this, you know. Kiss coworkers in hallways." "I'm glad you made an exception," I said, surprised by my own boldness. The sound of voices approaching from the main office space broke the moment. We moved apart naturally, smoothly, as if we'd rehearsed it. By the time two of our colleagues rounded the corner, we were just two coworkers having a casual conversation by the kitchen door. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I returned to my desk, trying to focus on my work while my mind kept replaying those moments in the hallway. Occasionally, I would glance up to find Alex looking at me from across the office, a small private smile on his face that sent warmth spreading through my chest. We didn't speak about it again that day. There was an unspoken agreement to process what had happened, to give ourselves space to think. But as we were leaving that evening, Alex caught up to me at the elevator. "Would you like to get dinner sometime?" he asked, his voice casual, but his eyes serious. "Maybe Friday." "I'd like that," I replied, trying and failing to keep the smile from my face. The elevator arrived with its cheerful ding, and we stepped inside along with several other colleagues heading home for the day. Standing side by side, not touching, not speaking, yet I felt more connected to him than I had to anyone in a long time. The next few days were a delicate dance of maintaining professionalism while navigating this new dimension to our relationship. We kept our interactions at work appropriate, but there were moments, a lingering glance across the conference table, fingers brushing when passing documents, standing just a little too close at the coffee machine, that felt charged with unspoken promises. Friday couldn't come fast enough. We had agreed to meet at a small restaurant several blocks from the office, far enough away that we were unlikely to run into coworkers. I arrived first, choosing a table in a quiet corner, and spent the next 10 minutes alternating between checking my phone and adjusting the silverware in front of me. When Alex walked in, my nervousness evaporated. He looked different outside of work, more relaxed in a simple blue button-down and dark jeans. His smile when he spotted me was warm and genuine, with none of the hesitation that had characterized our workplace interactions. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. Sorry if I'm a little late. You're right on time, I assured him, suddenly aware of how much I had been looking forward to this moment. Dinner was a revelation. Away from the constraints of our professional environment, Alex was funnier, more animated, more open. He told me about growing up in a small town in Oregon, being the only out gay kid in his high school, his journey to accepting himself. I shared my own stories, my supportive but sometimes clueless family, my previous relationship that had ended amicably but left me feeling adrift, my ambitions beyond my current job. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter and moments of surprising vulnerability. Hours passed without either of us noticing, until the restaurant had emptied around us and the staff was giving us polite but pointed looks. As we walked out into the cool evening air, Alex reached for my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both new and somehow familiar. "I had a really good time tonight," he said, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of my hand. "Me too," I replied, squeezing his hand gently. "So what happens now?" Alex turned to face me, his expression thoughtful. "Now we figure it out as we go. I like you a lot, more than I expected to. But I also respect that we work together, and that complicates things." "It does," I agreed. "But maybe it's worth the complication?" His smile in response was all the answer I needed. He leaned in, kissing me softly under the glow of a street lamp, unhurried and unworried about who might see us. That night marked the beginning of something I hadn't been looking for, but now couldn't imagine being without. We moved carefully at first, keeping our relationships separate from our professional lives as much as possible. But over time, as things between us deepened, we became less concerned with hiding. We had a conversation with HR, following company policy about disclosing relationships between coworkers. They were supportive, simply asking that we maintain professionalism at work, a boundary we had already established for ourselves. Gradually, our colleagues figured it out. There were no dramatic announcements, no office gossip, at least none that reached our ears. Just the slow recognition that where once there had been two separate individuals, now there was a pair, a unit, of them. 6 months after that first kiss in the hallway, Alex and I moved in together. A year later, he proposed during a weekend trip to the coast, down on one knee on the beach at sunset, making me laugh through my tears with a comment about how much more romantic this was than an office doorframe. Looking back, I'm still amazed at how one ordinary moment in an ordinary hallway could change everything. How the simple courage to stop someone by a doorframe, to take a chance on feelings that might not be reciprocated, could set in motion a lifetime of happiness. I think about that sometimes when we pass that hallway at work. It looks the same as it always did, just a corridor connecting one part of the office to another. But for us, it will always be the place where everything started, where a coworker walked me down the hallway and stopped me by the doorframe with his mouth, changing both our lives forever. Sometimes the biggest moments in our lives don't announce themselves with fanfare. They slip in quietly, disguised as ordinary days, ordinary interactions. And it's only in retrospect that we recognize them for what they were. The moments that divided our lives into before and after. That's what that kiss in the hallway was for me. Not just the beginning of a relationship, but a reminder that connection can find us in the most unexpected places, that love doesn't always follow the paths we've carefully laid out for it. Sometimes it waits for us in hallways, by doorframes, in the spaces between one moment and the next. And when it finds us there, the only thing to do is to be brave enough to stop walking, to turn around, to let ourselves be kissed by the possibility of something wonderful. Total _char_count, 17,635.